My 15-year-old idiot kid got his girlfriend pregnant on purpose. I still remember the exact words that came out of my son's mouth. He looked me dead in the eye, completely serious, and said, "Dad, we did it. She's pregnant. We wanted this to happen." My stomach dropped so fast I felt like I was falling. He wasn't crying. He wasn't scared. He was smiling, like he'd just told me he'd passed a math test or scored a goal at soccer. His girlfriend sat beside him, nodding, hands folded in her lap like this was all part of some perfect plan. That's when it hit me. My 15-year-old idiot kid actually got his girlfriend pregnant on purpose. I wanted to yell. I wanted to scream until the walls shook. Instead, I just sat there, staring at them, my mouth hanging open, no words coming out. My wife was in the kitchen washing dishes, and I swear she could feel the tension from the next room. She came out, drying her hands, and when she saw the looks on our faces, she knew something was very, very wrong. I told her. The words sounded fake even as they came out of my mouth. They say they did this on purpose. She dropped the plate she was holding. It shattered across the floor, but nobody moved. Before either of us could react, my son kept talking. He had a whole speech prepared about how he was ready to be a dad, about how love doesn't need age, and about how we should be happy for him. His girlfriend chimed in, saying she wanted to prove her own parents wrong, that she wasn't just some kid who couldn't handle responsibility. That's when my wife broke. Her voice cracked like I'd never heard before. "Your children," she shouted. "You've ruined your lives before they've even started." But my son, he didn't flinch. He just looked at us with that same proud, stubborn grin. And that's when he said something that shook me to my core. This was the only way to make sure we'd never be separated. I'll now roll back to how this insanity started, the small hints we ignored and the buildup that led to this shocking moment. It wasn't sudden. It had been brewing for months, hidden under our noses until it exploded in our living room like a bomb we never saw coming. It started the day he met her, back when he was still just 14. She'd transferred into his school mid-year. She was quiet, shy, and didn't have many friends at first. He came home talking about her constantly, how smart she was, how funny she was, how nobody understood her like he did. At first, I thought it was cute. Teenage crushes happen. We laughed about it at the dinner table. But soon, it wasn't just a crush. He started spending every free minute with her. He ignored his old friends, skipped after-school clubs, and even stopped playing video games like he used to. His world shrank down to one person, her. We tried to set boundaries. No closed doors, no sleepovers, schoolwork comes first. He agreed, on the surface, but I noticed the little rebellions. He'd sneak out at night, forget his phone at home so we couldn't track him, and lie about where he was going. We caught him once at the park with her, well past curfew, huddled together like they were planning something. I grounded him for a week. He didn't care. He said he'd do it again. Then came the grades. Straight A's turned to C's, then to failing marks. His teachers called, concerned. We confronted him, and he blew up, saying school didn't matter because real life was about love, not grades. I thought it was just typical teenage rebellion. I thought he'd grow out of it. But then little hints started stacking up. She started leaving things at our house, sweaters, books, even a toothbrush. My wife got nervous. She said it felt like the girl was moving in piece by piece. Then one day I overheard a conversation I should have taken more seriously. He was in his room with her, door slightly cracked. I heard him whisper, "If we had a baby, no one could tear us apart." I froze outside the door, heart hammering. She giggled and said, "You're crazy." But there was no fear in her voice. There was excitement. I wanted to burst in right then, but I didn't. I told myself they were just dumb kids saying dumb things. But now, sitting here, staring at them, those words came back to haunt me. And before I could stop myself, I asked the one question I shouldn't have. "Did you do this because you were afraid of being separated?" They didn't even hesitate. "Yes," they said together. The room went silent again. My wife was crying now, covering her mouth like she was holding in a scream. I felt like the walls were closing in, like the air had been sucked out of the house. And then, before we could even start figuring out what to do, my son added one last bombshell. "She's already 3 months along." The moment my son dropped the words, "she's already 3 months along," everything in the house detonated. My wife screamed, her voice echoing through the walls like an alarm. His girlfriend shrank into herself, arms wrapped around her stomach as though to shield it from the storm. And me, I just sat there in shock, trying to piece together how 3 whole months had passed right under our noses. 3 months? My wife shouted, her voice cracking. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" My son didn't even look ashamed. His chin was lifted high, defiant. "We know what we're doing. We're not kids anymore. We're going to raise this baby." That's it. That was the moment I snapped. "You are kids," I roared, slamming my fist on the table so hard the plates rattled. "You don't even have a job. You can't even keep your room clean, and now you think you're ready for a baby?" But the more I yelled, the calmer he seemed. His girlfriend even reached over and took his hand, and the sight of them sitting there united against us, against reality, made my stomach twist with rage and fear. Then came the second explosion. Her parents. We called them that night because there was no way we could keep this secret between just us. When they arrived, the whole house turned into a battlefield. Her mom burst into tears the second she saw her daughter sitting on our couch with her belly barely starting to show. Her dad, though, he went straight for my son. "You little punk. You ruined her life. Do you have any idea what you've done?" My son didn't back down. He stood up and shouted right back, "We wanted this. She wanted this too." That sent her dad into a frenzy. He lunged, and for a split second, I thought he was going to hit my kid. I had to step between them, my hands on his chest, pushing him back while my wife pulled our son away. Her mother begged through sobs, "Tell me it isn't true. Tell me you didn't mean for this to happen." But her daughter's voice was steady, chillingly steady. "We wanted it. We planned it. I'm not sorry." Her dad cursed so loudly I thought the neighbors might call the cops. And maybe they should have, because what came out next changed everything. "We're pressing charges," he spat, his face red with fury. "You hear me? You'll pay for what you did." The room went silent again. My son's face drained of color for the first time that night. He opened his mouth like he wanted to argue, but no sound came out. For the first time, the weight of what he had done seemed to actually land. My wife clutched his arm like a shield. "Please," she pleaded with them. "They're just kids. Don't ruin both their lives before they've even begun." But her dad wasn't listening. He stormed out, dragging his wife with him, swearing he'd call the police first thing in the morning. And then it was just us, me, my wife, my son, and his pregnant girlfriend, sitting in a house that suddenly felt like a prison. My wife broke down, sobbing into her hands. My son slumped into the couch, staring at the floor, his earlier pride nowhere to be found. His girlfriend whispered that everything would be okay, but her voice was trembling now, betraying the cracks in her confidence. I sat in silence, my heart pounding, because I knew the storm hadn't even fully hit yet. This was just the beginning. And then, just when I thought the night couldn't get any worse, my phone buzzed. It was the school principal. "Mr. I think we need to talk about something that happened today at school. It's about your son and his girlfriend. I'm afraid things are more complicated than you think." The call from the principal was the last thing I needed that night, but it was like fate decided to pile it all on at once. His voice was low, almost careful, as if he didn't want to scare me, but his words chilled me to my core. "Mr. Your son and his girlfriend caused a situation at school today. I think it's best we meet in person, tomorrow morning." When I hung up, I felt my stomach churn. My wife stared at me through swollen eyes, and even though I didn't say what it was about, she knew. She just whispered, "Oh God, not school, too." The next morning, we sat in the principal's office. My son slouched in the chair, his girlfriend clutching his hands so tight her knuckles turned white. My wife and I were tense, waiting. Then the principal slid a folder across the desk. Inside were printouts, screenshots from social media, posts, pictures, comments. My son had been bragging. There it was in his own words for the whole school to see. "We're gonna be parents. No one can split us up now. She's mine forever." Dozens of kids had commented. Some were laughing. Some were horrified. But it didn't stop there. Rumors had already started. Parents had called the school. Teachers were whispering. My son had turned what should have been a devastating private matter into a public spectacle. The principal's jaw was tight. "Do you understand the chaos this has caused? There are students teasing her in the hallways. There are parents demanding to know why the school isn't stepping in. And then there's the issue of," he trailed off, lowering his voice, "the legal side. She's 15, he's 15. This is going to raise very serious questions." My wife buried her face in her hands. I could feel her shaking beside me. But my son, he smirked. "Good, let them know. We're not hiding." I lost it, right there in the principal's office. "Do you even hear yourself? You're bragging about ruining 2 lives. You think this is some kind of badge of honor? This isn't love, it's reckless, it's stupid, and it's going to destroy you." Her girlfriend's eyes filled with tears, and for the first time I saw the cracks in her resolve. She wasn't smirking. She wasn't proud. She was scared. And that scared me even more because it meant she knew, deep down, that this wasn't the fairy tale they'd convinced themselves it was. The principal sighed. "Look, I can't fix what's already happened, but I strongly suggest you take action. Counseling, medical appointments, something. Because if you don't, the courts might step in." Courts. The word hung heavy in the air. On the drive home, silence filled the car like poison. My wife stared out the window, tears streaking down her cheeks. My son leaned back, arms crossed, defiant as ever. His girlfriend sat stiffly, hands folded over her stomach, not saying a word. When we pulled into the driveway, my wife whispered, almost too quiet to hear, "What if her dad wasn't bluffing about pressing charges?" That's when my son finally snapped out of his smug bubble. His face paled, and he asked, "Wait, he can't actually do that, can he?" But before I could answer, my phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't the principal. It was her dad. The message was short, cold, final. "Police are coming. I warned you." The message sat on my phone screen like a loaded gun. "Police are coming. I warned you." I read it 3 times before the knock came at the door. Heavy, firm, the kind of knock that makes your chest tighten. My wife gasped. My son froze mid-step, his face draining of color. His girlfriend clutched his arm, whispering, "It'll be okay," though her voice shook like brittle glass. When I opened the door, 2 officers stood there. 1 male, 1 female, both serious. "Are you Mr. the male officer asked. "Yes. We need to speak with you, your wife, your son, and his girlfriend. It's regarding a complaint filed earlier today." Her parents, of course. We all sat in the living room. The officers explained the situation. Her parents had filed a report claiming our son coerced her daughter. My son exploded at that, shouting that it wasn't true, that it was their choice, their plan, their love. But the officers didn't smile. They didn't nod. They just wrote everything down. Legally, the female officer said carefully, this is complicated. They're both 15, which puts them in a very specific category. The court may look at this as consensual, but since there's pregnancy involved, it raises questions about capability and coercion. That's why we're here. My wife broke down again, sobbing into her hands. I felt a cold sweat trickle down my back. My son looked like he wanted to argue more, but for once, he stayed quiet, his jaw tight, eyes burning. Then the officers asked something that made my stomach lurch. Have they had consistent, unsupervised time together? We said yes. Too much, apparently. The female officer nodded. We'll be making a referral to family services. They'll want to get involved immediately. This isn't just about the baby. It's about whether these two are an environment that's safe for them and for the child. Her words felt like a hammer slamming into my chest. Safe? They were questioning if our home was safe. After the officers left, silence filled the house. My wife curled up on the couch, shaking. His girlfriend whispered that she didn't want to go home, that she was afraid of what her dad would say or do. My son held her, glaring at me like I was the enemy. This is all your fault, he spat. If you just supported us, none of this would have happened. I stared at him, stunned. My fault? Our fault? He had turned this into a nightmare, and somehow in his head, we were the villains for not celebrating it. That night, we barely slept. Every creak of the house felt like another blow waiting to land. My wife and I whispered in the dark, terrified that family services would show up any day, terrified that her parents would push harder, terrified that the courts would drag us into something that could destroy our entire family. But nothing prepared me for what happened the next morning. When I went into the kitchen, my son and his girlfriend were gone. Their bedroom window was open, and on the table was a note scrawled in his messy handwriting. If no one will let us be together, we'll run away. Don't try to find us. The sight of that note nearly knocked the air out of me. My wife screamed when she read it, clutching it in her shaking hands, her face going pale as paper. They're gone! He took her! He actually took her! I ran outside, shouting their names, scanning the street like maybe they'd just be hiding around the corner. Nothing. The neighbor's dog barked and lights flicked on in a few houses, but the night was empty. We called everyone we could think of. Friends, relatives, even some of the kids my son hung out with. Every answer was the same. We haven't seen him. Then came the worst call of all. Her parents. When they found out their daughter was missing, her mom broke down into hysterics, wailing over the phone. Her dad, though, he lost it. He accused us of helping them run away. He shouted that we were hiding them, that we were criminals, that we'd ruined his daughter's life, and now we'd pay for it. Before I could even argue, he hung up. An hour later, flashing red and blue lights filled our driveway. Police cars, family services, even her parents, storming up our steps like they were ready to tear the house apart. The officers searched every room, they questioned us separately, they took the note as evidence, they called it a juvenile runaway situation, and promised to put out alerts immediately. But that didn't make my wife stop shaking or her parents stop screaming. The next 48 hours were hell. The police asked for photos, flyers went up, calls came in with false leads. One woman swore she saw them at a gas station, another said she spotted them on a bus. Each time I heart raced, only to crash when it led nowhere. Meanwhile, her dad's rage only grew. He cornered me outside our house one night, jabbing a finger into my chest. This is on you. You raised a monster. He kidnapped my daughter, and if anything happens to her or that baby, I'll make sure you pay. I wanted to argue, I wanted to scream back, but the truth was, deep down, I feared he might be right. My son, my 15-year-old, had dragged a terrified girl into God knows what, and I didn't know if I'd ever see him again. On the third night, the call finally came. 2 kids matching their description had been picked up in a neighboring town. They'd been spotted loitering near a 24-hour diner, exhausted, hungry, and clearly in over their heads. Police picked them up without a fight. When we saw them at the station, I barely recognized my son. His cocky smirk was gone, his eyes were bloodshot. He looked small. His girlfriend looked worse, pale, sick, trembling. She wouldn't even look at her parents. The officers explained they hadn't gotten far. No money, no plan, no clue what they were doing. They just wanted to prove they could make it on their own. Her parents pulled her into their arms, sobbing. My wife clutched our son, half relieved, half angry beyond words. But the relief didn't last, because the officer cleared his throat and said, given the circumstances, family services and the court will be heavily involved moving forward. There's no brushing this off anymore. And then like a dagger, he added, this may not just be a family matter anymore. There are possible legal consequences for everyone involved. My son's face went white, my wife gasped, and all I could think was, this was only the beginning. Weeks later, after endless meetings with family services and tense silences at home, I thought maybe, just maybe, we were finally climbing out of the wreckage. My son was quieter, more withdrawn, almost like reality had finally sunk in. Then, one evening, I passed by his room and noticed him hunched over his desk, scribbling furiously in a notebook. Curious, I glanced at the page when he left to grab water. My blood ran cold. It wasn't homework, it wasn't an apology, it was a plan. Scrawled across the page in messy, desperate handwriting were words that made my stomach twist. Next time, they won't find us. She said yes, we'll take the baby too.